Hey everyone! Ready to dive deep into the world of The Shawshank Redemption? Released on September 23, 1994, this film has sparked endless discussions, and today, we're uncovering every thrilling detail. If you enjoy this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us grow. And for more incredible movie explorations and hidden gems, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's unravel the magic behind this cinematic masterpiece. Let's journey into one of the most powerful, soul-stirring stories ever captured on film, The Shawshank Redemption, released to the world on the 23rd of September, 1994. It wasn't a film that immediately broke box office records or dazzled critics with flashy effects or a grand marketing campaign. Instead, it arrived quietly, like a whisper in a crowded room, soft-spoken, unassuming, and patiently waiting to be heard. But what happened in the years that followed transformed this understated drama into a global cinematic treasure. Over time, it gained not just acclaim but reverence, often hailed as one of the greatest films ever made. And once you've seen it, you understand why. There's something in it that lingers, a whisper of hope, a feeling that even in the darkest places, something pure and untouchable can survive. At its core, The Shawshank Redemption is about Andy Dufresne, a man wrongfully convicted of murdering his wife and her lover, and sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences at Shawshank State Penitentiary. But this film isn't merely about prison or the crime that led Andy there. It's about the slow, quiet power of human endurance. About friendship forged in the bleakest of places. And about hope, that quiet but unkillable ember that burns even when the world turns cold. From the first frame, the film builds a rhythm that feels almost novelistic, methodical, richly layered, and intimate. The pacing is deliberate, almost hypnotic, drawing us into the day-to-day grind of prison life, where time stretches endlessly and freedom exists only in memories. And yet, within this drab world of grey stone and iron bars, the film finds color. Not just in visuals, but in emotion, in moments of defiance, in the smiles exchanged between Andy and Red, and in the extraordinary life that begins to bloom behind the prison walls. Andy, played with a haunting subtlety by Tim Robbins, is not your typical movie hero. He doesn't rage or rebel. He doesn't try to escape in a blaze of glory. Instead, he watches. He learns. He builds. He chips away at the impossible with the patience of a saint and the precision of a banker. His strength lies in his silence. Every smile is deliberate. Every pause is filled with quiet resistance. Robbins' performance is a masterclass in restraint, allowing us to lean in, to guess at the storm within. And then there's Red. Morgan Freeman doesn't just play Red. He becomes the soul of the story. His narration guides us like a trusted friend, offering wisdom, reflection, and a touch of dry humor. Red isn't flashy or idealistic. He's grounded, institutionalized, and quietly skeptical of anything that sounds too good to be true. Hope, to Red, is a dangerous thing. It's something that eats away at you in a place like Shawshank. And yet, as the story unfolds, it's through Red's eyes that we begin to see Andy's influence take root. Not just in the library he builds or the opera he dares to play, but in the belief that maybe, just maybe, life can be something more than bars and routine. The prison itself becomes a character. The way director Frank Darabont frames the towering walls, the shadowy corners, and the long, silent hallways, it all creates a world that feels lived in and suffocating. Every shot feels purposeful, every silence loaded. Roger Deakins' cinematography lends the film a kind of poetic realism. It never draws attention to itself, but it always elevates the moment. When Andy stretches his arms in the rain after crawling through the saw pipe, the image is so iconic, so cathartic, that it burns itself into memory. It's not just rain, it's rebirth. Not just escape, it's transcendence. The plot itself is deceptively simple, yet rich with detail. After being sentenced, Andy begins a slow transformation, not of himself, but of Shawshank. He earns the trust of guards, then the warden, not through manipulation, but by offering his banking skills. He helps them with taxes, laundering, financial scams. In return, he asks for small things, a hammer, a poster, books. Nothing flashy. Nothing that would raise suspicion. And slowly, Through these small gestures, he builds a library, educates prisoners, brings a spark of life to a place long dead. Then comes the twist. After nearly 2 decades, Andy vanishes. Just like that. One night he's in his cell, and the next, he's gone. The warden loses his mind. The guards tear through the prison. And then, with glorious, meticulous precision, we learn the truth. Andy dug a tunnel with his tiny rock hammer, inch by inch, night after night, hidden behind posters of movie stars. He climbed through a tunnel of waste and emerged into the storm, not just free, but triumphant. He didn't just escape. He took down the whole corrupt institution on his way out. But even with all the brilliance of the plot, the Shawshank Redemption resonates because of its emotional core. Because after Andy's escape, the story doesn't end. We stay with Red, who's left behind to grapple with what it all meant. He gets parole. He enters a world he no longer recognizes. The scenes of Red navigating the outside are some of the most heartbreaking in the film, not because they're dramatic, but because they're real. Freeman shows us a man who's lost his place, who speaks in terms of routines and permissions even when no one's watching. But then, Red remembers. He remembers the field, the oak tree, the promise. And so he sets off, not with certainty, but with hope. That final sequence, Red walking down the beach to find Andy in Zihuatanejo, might just be one of the most emotionally satisfying endings ever filmed. There are no words spoken. Just a smile, the shimmer of the sea, and the knowledge that after everything, they made it. Hope, that most fragile of things, survived. But why did this film, which had only modest box office success, become such a cultural juggernaut? The answer lies in timing, in word of mouth, and in the universality of its message. On paper, it's a prison drama. But in spirit, it's a story about endurance, redemption, and friendship. It struck a chord with audiences who saw themselves in Andy's quiet struggle, in Red's journey toward belief, and in the small, beautiful victories that accumulate when you refuse to let despair win. Cable television helped immortalize it. 4 years, The Shawshank Redemption was on a constant loop on TNT and other networks, finding new viewers every day. And each time someone watched it, they'd tell someone else. It became a kind of cinematic campfire story, shared, beloved, and passed on. Today, it regularly tops greatest film lists. On IMDb, it holds the top spot as the highest-rated movie of all time, above even The Godfather and The Dark Knight. That didn't happen overnight. It happened because The Shawshank Redemption doesn't just entertain, it stays with you. It makes you reflect on your own life, your own walls, and what freedom really means. The dialogue is filled with quiet brilliance. Lines like "get busy living" or "get busy dying" have become part of the cultural lexicon. But none of it feels forced. It feels earned. The friendship between Andy and Red is never sentimental or exaggerated. It's built on mutual respect, shared silence, and hard-won trust. And that makes their story all the more powerful. Frank Darabont's direction, based on a novella by Stephen King, might be one of the greatest adaptations in cinema. He found not just the plot, but the soul of King's work. He expanded it with grace, never overplaying the drama, always letting the emotions rise naturally. The score by Thomas Newman is another vital thread, melancholic, restrained, and quietly hopeful. It doesn't overwhelm, it whispers. It seeps into the corners of scenes, subtly elevating them. Visually, the film contrasts the brutalism of prison architecture with fleeting moments of beauty. A record playing over loudspeakers, a letter hidden beneath a stone, the horizon at the end of a long road. These moments feel like breath after drowning. They remind us, again and again, that there's something more. Something waiting. Something worth holding on for. To dive deeper into The Shawshank Redemption is to explore not just a film, but a philosophy. It asks, what does it mean to be free? What does it mean to have hope in a place designed to kill it? And how do you survive, day after day, when the world gives you no reason to believe it will get better? The answers aren't loud or easy, but they are there, in Andy's quiet persistence, in Red's transformation, and in that final reunion by the sea. If you've never seen it, prepare to be changed. If you've seen it dozens of times, You already know, it gets better with every watch. Not because the story changes, but because we do. And each time we return to Shawshank, we find something new. A detail we missed. A line that hits harder. A moment that reflects where we are now in our own lives. The Shawshank Redemption isn't just a movie. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of places, the light can still get in. That hope is not weakness, it's strength. That freedom can be found, even behind walls. And sometimes, salvation lies in the quietest plans, the longest games, and the deepest friendships. Let's journey into the heart of the Shawshank Redemption, peeling back the layers of its first half, where every frame is a piece of quiet tension, and every line carries the weight of what's to come. From the very beginning, the film sets a tone that isn't loud or explosive, but slow-burning, creeping in with a quiet sense of inevitability. The lights are low in a New England courtroom. Rain patters softly outside. Inside, Andrew Dufresne, Andy, is being tried for a double homicide. His expression is unreadable, a mask of calm that the prosecutor interprets as cold-blooded calculation. The evidence is circumstantial, but damning. A broken marriage, a cheating wife, a loaded revolver, missing bullets, and a night of drunken brooding. The jury takes only a few hours. Andy Dufresne, once a respected banker, is sentenced to 2 life terms at Shawshank State Penitentiary. From the quiet anguish of the courtroom, we are thrust into a different world. One where the rules are unwritten, and survival is a daily ritual. The arrival of the new inmates at Shawshank is an event. Inmates line up along the stone wall, guards posture with batons and slurs, and inside the cells, bets are placed. Red, Ellis Boyd Redding, watches it all unfold with the wisdom of a man who's been through it many times before. He's been at Shawshank for 20 years and knows the rhythm of the place like he knows the rhythm of his own heartbeat. Played with a mesmerizing ease by Morgan Freeman, Red becomes our narrator, our lens, our guide into this brutal world. Red is the man who can get things. Cigarettes, posters, chocolate, even a little rock hammer if you're patient and quiet about it. When he first sees Andy, tall, pale, and silent, he doesn't think much of him. He bets against him in the arrival pool, assuming the soft banker won't last a week. The night falls, and the new fish start to cry. It's a ritual. Someone always breaks. But not Andy. He sits silently on his bunk, eyes wide open, absorbing everything. Watching. Listening. Red is surprised. Everyone is. This is where the suspense takes hold, not in flashy action, but in the way Andy quietly refuses to break. We learn more about the prison from Red's narration. The beatings. The sisters, a gang of inmates who prey on weaker men. The harsh discipline doled out by Captain Hadley, the brutal head guard with a hair-trigger temper. The warden, Samuel Norton, a man who quotes scripture with a smirk and runs the prison like a corrupt congregation. The walls have a system, and that system is unkind. Andy's early days are hard. The sisters target him, and although he resists, he doesn't always succeed. He endures, not with fists, but with silence. He takes beatings that leave him blooded, but he never complains. This resilience, this almost maddening calm, starts to change the way people see him. Red especially. He begins to admire Andy, not for his strength, but for his will. Andy isn't surviving Shawshank the way most men do. He's reshaping it from the inside, one small act at a time. One of those acts begins with a single question. Andy approaches Red and asks for a rock hammer. Red is skeptical, but curious. Andy says he's a geologist in his spare time. He likes rocks, shaping them, carving them. Red agrees. He gets him the hammer, something small, almost toy-like. Nothing that could be used as a weapon. Nothing that could possibly pose a threat. Or so it seems. Andy chips away at the wall, quite literally, but no one notices. Instead, he starts carving a life for himself in more subtle ways. He earns a place on a work detail, tarring the roof of a prison building. On that roof, with the sun blazing overhead, Andy listens to Hadley complain about inheritance taxes. With that same eerie calm, Andy offers advice. Legal advice. He tells Hadley how to gift the money to his wife without losing most of it to taxes. Hadley almost throws him off the roof. But Andy's confidence stops him. He explains, patiently, with the same kind of authority he once used in a bank boardroom. And slowly, the threat turns into curiosity, then into trust. That single moment shifts everything. In return for his help, Hadley gives the crew ice-cold beers. And for a brief afternoon, under the golden light of the sun, the inmates feel like free men. They sip beer in silence, savoring the taste, the illusion of normalcy. Andy doesn't drink. He just sits with them, smiling faintly, satisfied not with the beer, but with what he gave them, something they hadn't felt in years. Dignity. This is Andy's method. He doesn't charge into power. He earns influence with kindness, intelligence, and long-game thinking. He becomes a fixture in the prison's inner workings. Guards begin seeking him out for financial advice. Taxes, investments, pensions. The warden notices. And where there's opportunity, there's exploitation. Warden Norton recruits Andy to handle his own financial dealings, first legally, then, not so much. Andy begins laundering money under the alias Randall Stevens, building a network of fraudulent operations masked as prison work programs. The warden preaches Bible verses while profiting off cheap labor. Andy, ever composed, plays along. But behind his eyes, something is always calculating. All the while, Andy continues to build something far more meaningful, the prison library. He starts by writing letters to the state for donations. They ignore him. He keeps writing. 1 a week. 2 years pass. Then, boxes begin arriving. Books, records, supplies. It's a small miracle, but Andy isn't done. He transforms the musty broom closet into the best prison library in New England. Inmates begin studying for JEDs. Some discover a love of reading. Others, like young Tommy, find a second chance at life. Tommy is a street-smart kid with a good heart and a checkered past. When he joins Shawshank, he's loud and brash, but Andy sees potential. He tutors him, encourages him to get his high school diploma. Under Andy's guidance, Tommy begins to change. He's more than a side character. He becomes a symbol of Andy's belief that people can be more than their worst mistakes. But with Tommy's arrival comes something far more dangerous, a revelation. In a late-night conversation, Tommy tells a story. Years ago, in another prison, he bunked with a man who bragged about killing a woman and her lover, and pinning it on her banker husband. Andy listens in stunned silence. The details match his case. For the first time, Andy sees a real path to justice, to freedom. He brings the information to the warden. His hope surges. Finally, he can clear his name. But hope, in Shawshank, is a dangerous thing. Warden Norton shuts him down, cold. He refuses to act, and worse, he removes Tommy from the equation permanently. The implication is chilling. The message is clear. Andy knows too much. He's too valuable. And now, he's trapped. This is where the suspense coils tighter. Andy returns to his routine, but something has changed. He's quieter, distant. Red notices. One day, Andy asks Red a strange question. If he ever gets out, would he go to a certain field in Buxton? Under a tree, near a rock that has no earthly business being there, Andy tells him, is something buried. Something important. Then he speaks of Zihuatanejo, a place in Mexico with no memory, no prisons, no bars. A place where hope lives. Red is disturbed. He thinks Andy is preparing to take his own life. He warns him, pleads with him. Andy only smiles that faint smile, the one that always hides more than it reveals. That night, Andy walks back to his cell, and the next morning, he's gone. The first half of the Shawshank Redemption lays this groundwork with such meticulous care, layering tension without a single explosion, building suspense without ever shouting. The prison becomes a stage for human resilience, for quiet rebellion, for dreams buried under layers of concrete and time. And as we move toward the midpoint, we're left on edge, not just wondering where Andy went, but what he's been planning all along. Every detail, every look, Every act of kindness suddenly feels like a piece of something much larger. Something we can't quite see yet, but feel, in our bones, is coming. The morning after Andy Dufresne disappears, Shawshank is silent in a way that feels unnatural. The guards storm his cell with confusion and urgency. He's not at roll call. Not in the yard. Not in the library. He's simply gone. Warden Norton, red-faced and seething, arrives with Captain Hadley, convinced Andy is hiding somewhere. They unlock his cell. Everything looks normal, his bed neatly made, the small chess pieces on his shelf untouched, the iconic poster of Raquel Welch still taped to the wall. But something is wrong. They search every inch of the cell, until, in a sudden burst of anger, the warden grabs one of Andy's polished stones and hurls it at the poster. It doesn't bounce. It tears straight through. Silence turns into shock. Behind the poster is a gaping hole, nearly 20 years in the making. All at once, the quiet genius of Andy Dufresne comes crashing into focus. He didn't vanish, he escaped. Crawled through the wall, slithered through a hole just wide enough to fit a man, behind the concrete that no one ever suspected. He'd spent decades slowly chipping away with a rock hammer, dumping the dust into the yard through his pant legs, bit by bit, day by day, without anyone noticing. That small request for a rock hammer all those years ago? That was the beginning. The chessboard, the posters, the calm demeanor. It was all camouflage for something much bigger. And then comes the twist no one saw coming. The film rewinds time, pulling us into the 24 hours before Andy's escape, revealing the brilliance of his plan. The suit, the shoes, the ledger. He was never giving up. He was getting ready. That night, while the prison slept, Andy wore the warden's shoes, carried the ledger of Randall Stevens, and crawled through 500 yards of foul-smelling sawpipe. That's the length of 5 football fields, just shy of half a mile, Red tells us, until he emerged into the cold rain of freedom. Lightning cracked the sky as Andy raised his arms, soaked in rain and reborn. It's one of the most powerful visuals in cinematic history, not because of grand special effects, but because of the emotional weight behind it. It's the image of liberation, of a man reclaiming his life from a place designed to erase it. But Andy's escape wasn't just for himself. The next morning, newspapers are delivered to the local police. Inside them, evidence, documents, transactions, names, numbers. Every detail of the warden's laundering scheme, laid out meticulously. Andy mailed it all. He didn't just crawl out of Shawshank. He brought it down from the outside. Soon after, officers arrive at the prison. Captain Hadley, stunned and helpless, is arrested. Warden Norton, cornered by the weight of his own corruption, locks himself in his office. Surrounded by open drawers, empty liquor bottles, and Andy's Bible. The same Bible he once scoffed about keeping Andy's soul. He opens it. Inside is a hollow space carved perfectly for a rock hammer. The word salvation lies within echo in his mind, and in his final act of cowardice, he takes his own life. Red narrates this downfall not with vengeance, but with a kind of poetic justice. Andy got the last laugh, he says. A man like Norton never saw it coming. The prison, once a fortress of despair, begins to crumble under the truth Andy left behind. It isn't just the escape, it's the meaning behind it. The idea that the system can't contain a man with hope. And then there's Red. For all the time we've followed Andy, it's Red's transformation that hits hardest in the second half. His world is shaken. The man he called a friend, a mystery, a quiet enigma, pulled off something impossible. And yet, Red's still in Shawshank, still serving a sentence that feels like forever. When he goes before the parole board again, the script flips. No more rehearsed answers. No more pretending. He speaks from the heart, saying he doesn't even know what rehabilitated means anymore. That he wishes he could talk to that young man he once was, tell him how things would turn out. But that's not how it works, he says, full of sorrow, full of truth. This time, unexpectedly, his approved. Freedom, after 40 years. But outside, Red finds himself suffocated. The world has changed. The cars, the streets, the speed of everything. It's all too much. The same walls that once confined him now echo in his mind like a lost comfort. He bags groceries at a store. Lives in the same halfway house that once housed another old inmate. Brooks, the man who couldn't cope with freedom and took his own life. That memory haunts Red. The loneliness, the feeling that his purpose was left behind in Shawshank. But Andy hadn't forgotten him. Remember the field? The tree in Buxton? One day, with hands trembling and hope barely hanging on, Red journeys to that field. He finds the tree. Beneath it, the volcanic rock. And under that, a letter. Andy's handwriting. A message not just of invitation, but of belief. If you've come this far, maybe you're willing to come a little further. He invites Red to join him in Zihuatanejo, a place on the Pacific where dreams are rebuilt. Hope, Andy writes, is a good thing. Maybe the best of things. And no good thing ever dies. Red breaks parole. Boards a bus. And for the first time in a long time, hope shines in his eyes. He tells us he's not sure what lies ahead. But he hopes to see his friend. To shake his hand. To feel free. The final scenes show Red walking along a dusty road. The ocean on the horizon. And then, there it is. The beach. The boat. Andy, sanding away. Building his future. He looks up. Red approaches. The two friends reunite. No words. Just a hug, a moment, a connection stronger than all the silence that came before. And that's where the Shawshank Redemption leaves us. Not with fanfare or applause, but with a quiet, overwhelming sense of peace. It's a story of endurance, of friendship, of daring to hope when everything around you says not to. Andy's escape was more than physical. It was spiritual. And Red's journey shows us that sometimes the greatest act of courage is believing there's something left beyond the walls you've lived in your whole life. The film ties every thread, every character, every metaphor back into that singular, powerful theme, hope. And by the time the credits roll, we're not just watching a story. We've lived it, felt it, and we're better for it. Let's dive deep into the souls of the Shawshank Redemption, a film that thrives not on spectacle, but on the quiet brilliance of its characters, whose stories burrow deep into your chest and linger long after the credits roll. This isn't just a tale about escaping prison. It's a meditation on human endurance, friendship, morality, and above all, hope. At the core of it all are the people who live behind Shawshank's cold, grey walls, each one a thread in a rich emotional tapestry that makes this film timeless. Andy Dufresne enters Shawshank not as a broken man, but as one completely unreadable. Played by Tim Robbins with haunting restraint, Andy is immediately an enigma. He doesn't plead for sympathy. He doesn't protest with passion. He simply accepts his fate with the quiet, detached demeanor of someone who already knows the odds are against him. And yet, that stillness isn't surrender, it's calculation. From the very beginning, Andy is watching, listening, learning. There's something brewing beneath that calm exterior, something we don't understand until far later. Andy's arc is like a slow-motion reveal. He starts as the mystery of the prison, a man so unyielding in his silence that others mistake him for weak. But through relentless abuse, attempted rape, and the soul-crushing weight of routine, Andy doesn't shatter. He adapts. He waits. His transformation isn't loud, it's steady. Over time, Andy becomes a cornerstone of the prison's rhythm. He helps guards with their taxes, builds the library, changes lives. But beneath every small kindness is a plan decades in the making. And Robbins doesn't oversell it. He plays Andy as someone whose greatest strength is patience. A man who plays the long game not because he's resigned to his fate, but because he knows how to quietly outwit it. It's a performance defined by nuance. And that's what makes Andy unforgettable. He never begs for empathy. He earns it, one quiet, unshakable moment at a time. Opposite Andy is Ellis Boyd Red Redding, played with masterful warmth by Morgan Freeman. Red is the voice of the film, literally and spiritually. He opens the gates of Shawshank for us. He is the man who knows every corner, every crack in the stone, every rule spoken and unspoken. He's the guy who can get you things, not out of greed, but because it gives him purpose. Freeman's voice, soothing, measured, weathered by time, is the heartbeat of this story. Through him, we understand the prison not just as a place, but as a living organism. Red isn't flashy. He's observant, skeptical, honest in ways no one else dares to be. At first, he doesn't understand Andy. But that's what makes their relationship so compelling. Red begins with a certain detachment. He's seen too many men arrive and break. But Andy isn't like the others. There's something unnerving in the way Andy clings to hope, something Red himself has long since buried. Hope, to Red, is dangerous. It's a lie whispered into the ears of inmates who don't survive. But Andy refuses to let it die. And as their friendship deepens, Red changes. Slowly, imperceptibly, until, by the end, he becomes the man who takes a chance, breaks parole, and chases after a dream on a beach in Mexico. Red's arc is perhaps the most profound. He learns to believe again, to feel again. And Freeman brings it all to life with a performance so deeply human, so heartbreakingly honest, that you never question a single moment of it. Together, Andy and Red form one of the most authentic friendships ever captured on screen. It's not forged in grand gestures, but in long talks over chess games, in quiet afternoons in the library, in smuggled gifts and glances across the yard. It's a bond that grows organically over decades, and when Red finally finds Andy at the end, on that stretch of beach in Zihuatanejo, it's more than a reunion. It's a spiritual arrival. Two souls who saved each other, standing side by side in a world they never thought they'd reach. But the brilliance of Shawshank lies in how even its supporting characters are fully realized, carrying their own weight in this story of survival and transformation. Take Brooks Hatlen, the elderly prison librarian. Brooks has spent so much of his life in Shawshank that the outside world becomes an alien planet to him. His release, which should feel like salvation, becomes a death sentence. He doesn't know how to live beyond the walls that once confined him. The scene where he hangs himself is one of the most devastating in the film, not because it's shocking, but because it feels so painfully inevitable. Brooks is the embodiment of institutionalization of what happens when freedom becomes more frightening than captivity. His story casts a long shadow over Red's future and makes Red's choice to live all the more powerful. Then there's Tommy Williams, a young inmate with slicked back hair, a fast mouth, and a good heart. Tommy is the kind of guy who might have slipped through the cracks anywhere else, but not with Andy watching over him. Andy sees potential in Tommy, helps him study, encourages him to finish his high school equivalency, and in doing so, gives him the first glimpse of a life beyond petty crime. But Tommy's story, like so many in Shawshank, doesn't end with a happy resolution. His revelation about Andy's innocence becomes too dangerous for the powers that be. And when Warden Norton has him killed under the guise of maintaining order, it's not just a plot twist, it's a gut punch. Tommy's death is the moment Andy fully realizes that the system doesn't want justice. It wants silence. Captain Hadley is another fascinating layer, at first a brutish caricature of authority, but eventually more complex than he appears. Played by Clancy Brown, Hadley is violent, loud, and unforgiving. But even he isn't immune to Andy's influence. When Andy helps him legally protect his inheritance, Hadley offers beer to the crew on the rooftop. It's a rare moment of humanity from a man whose job is to crush it out of others. And though Hadley never becomes good, he becomes someone caught in a machine bigger than himself, like so many others at Shawshank. And then there's Warden Samuel Norton, a man who hides behind scripture, quotes the Bible with precision, and believes deeply in control. Bob Gunton plays him with a cold precision that makes your skin crawl. Norton is the embodiment of righteous hypocrisy. He builds an image of order and piety, but behind the curtain runs a corrupt empire built on greed and power. When Andy threatens to upend that system, Norton's calm unravels. His descent into panic, and eventually suicide, isn't just the fall of a villain, it's the collapse of a symbol. A man who claimed moral superiority, undone by his own lies. What The Shawshank Redemption does so masterfully is allow each of these characters, big and small, to contribute to the film's central theme. This isn't just Andy's story, or Red's story. It's a mosaic of lives shaped by a place designed to erase identity. And yet, somehow, Each person leaves a mark. Every performance in this film is rooted in restraint. There's no melodrama, no overacting, no scenes that feel artificially heightened. Everything feels lived in, authentic, heartbreakingly real. The dialogue is spare but sharp. The emotion comes not from what's said, but from what's held back. From the pauses, the looks, the silence between sentences. It's a cast that understood the power of minimalism, how to let a moment breathe and speak for itself. And perhaps that's the secret to why these characters stay with us. They aren't heroes in the traditional sense. They're broken, complicated, flawed. But they never stop feeling human. They never stop reminding us of ourselves, the parts we hide, the fears we carry, the dreams we think are too far gone. They teach us that even in the darkest place imaginable, light can survive. That dignity isn't granted by freedom, but by choice. And that hope can be the most powerful weapon of all. By the end of the film, these characters have taken us on a journey that isn't about escape from a prison, but escape from despair. And when Red walks across that beach and finds Andy, we're not just watching a reunion. We're witnessing the triumph of two spirits who refuse to be broken. That's why the Shawshank Redemption endures. Not because of spectacle, but because of humanity. Because in a world of grey stone and iron bars, it dared to show us what it means to be truly free. Absolutely, let's unravel the secrets hidden deep within the Shawshank Redemption, where almost every shot, every line, and every detail whispers a deeper meaning. This is a film that rewards those who watch closely, where even silence can speak volumes. These hidden touches don't just add flavor. They reveal how meticulously crafted this masterpiece truly is. And what's even more remarkable is how naturally they're woven into the story, never shouting for attention, only waiting to be discovered. It all begins with the first few minutes, before Andy ever steps foot inside Shawshank. That haunting courtroom sequence, bathed in shadows, is far more than a narrative device to establish Andy's alleged crime. It's a masterclass in ambiguity. Watch Tim Robbins carefully. His performance walks a razor-thin line between guilt and innocence. His eyes don't plead. They absorb. It's here that the audience first experiences the central theme of perception versus reality. The judge declares, "It chills my blood just to look at you." And the camera lingers on Andy, emotionless, unknowable. We're not told what to believe. We're invited to decide for ourselves. And that invitation lasts until the truth is finally revealed much later in the film. When Andy arrives at Shawshank, the shift in color palette is subtle but significant. The world becomes colder, more desaturated. Shawshank isn't just a prison. It's a place where time stops. But there's something fascinating about how the color red is used. Red's name, of course, is Ellis Boyd Redding. But the actual color red rarely appears until moments of emotional or narrative significance. When Andy gives Red the harmonica, a moment of unexpected humanity, you'll spot muted reds in the background, subtly framing their connection. Later, when Red discovers Andy's letter beneath the volcanic rock, the green of the field and the red of the soil beneath mirror hope and resurrection. These choices aren't accidents, they're visual poetry. The posters that line Andy's cell wall are some of the film's most iconic visual elements, but there's more to them than just decoration. Rita Hayworth, Marilyn Monroe, and Raquel Welch, all bombshells of their eras, symbolize different stages of Andy's transformation. Rita is the first. Her presence reflects Andy's early attempts at fitting in, hiding, playing by the rules. Then comes Monroe, her skirt forever blowing upward in that famous pose, symbolic of change, of disruption, of a shifting wind. Finally, Raquel Welch in 1,000,000 years BC stands defiantly in the desert, a figure of survival and strength. She's the one guarding the tunnel. She's the final mask hiding Andy's greatest secret. These aren't just pin-ups. They're markers of time, of growth, and of rebellion. One of the most beautifully understated moments of foreshadowing comes early on, when Andy asks Red for a rock hammer. Red laughs, imagining Andy using it to tunnel out. "It would take a man 600 years to tunnel through the wall with one of these," he jokes. It's a throwaway line, until it isn't. That very hammer becomes the chisel of Andy's freedom. but it also becomes a symbol of persistence. Andy doesn't need 600 years. He needs 20. And while we're on it, the chess set Andy carves. That's no idle hobby. Each piece is sculpted from stone he chips out of the wall. He's literally building his escape with every move, every game, every patient decision. Andy's journey is steeped in religious imagery, but it's never heavy-handed. When Warden Norton hands Andy a Bible and says, "Salvation lies within," it's a line that echoes with dual meaning. Norton thinks he's reminding Andy to keep his soul in check, but Andy hears something different. The Bible literally contains salvation. His rock hammer is hidden inside it. And if you flip to the exact page Andy cut the hollow from, it's the Book of Exodus. A book about deliverance, about escape from oppression. Whether you're religious or not, the metaphor sings. There's also a quiet genius in how music is used. When Andy plays the duet from Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro over the prison's PA system, it isn't just an act of rebellion. The song is about two women plotting to outsmart their overlords, about liberation from control. Even though the inmates can't understand the words, they feel the spirit. It's a moment of shared transcendence. And for Andy, it's a declaration that beauty and dignity still exist, even here. The shot of Red staring skyward, awash in the sound, is unforgettable. "I have no idea to this day what those two Italian ladies were singing about," he says. "Truth is, I don't want to know. Some things are best left unsaid." That scene becomes a meditation on art, how its power doesn't rely on logic, but emotion. One of the most fascinating characters is Brooks Hatlen, whose story is filled with symbolic weight. When Brooks is released, the bird Jake, whom he once nurtured, flies away. It's a quiet moment, but it encapsulates everything. Jake has the instincts to survive outside. Brooks doesn't. His release, meant to be a reward, becomes a death sentence. And when he hangs himself, carving "Brooks was here" into the wood, it becomes more than a cry for help. It becomes a marker, proof that even the forgotten leave behind a presence. Later, Red carves his own message beside it, "So was Red." But this time, the outcome is different. Red lives. Red escapes. Red rewrites the meaning of that place. There are clever editing tricks too. When Andy escapes and Warden Norton finds his suit missing, there's a blinkandule misit cut to a shot of Andy walking across the prison yard years earlier, briefly wearing Norton's shoes. It's the kind of visual sleight of hand that you only notice on rewatch, and it rewards the attentive viewer. The movie doesn't telegraph its reveals. It plants seeds and trusts the audience to catch up. Even Andy's identity as Randall Stevens, the fake persona he creates for the money laundering, is a multi-layered Easter egg. On one level, it's just a clever ruse. But look closer at the name. Randall shares roots with Shield Wolf, a protector who hides in plain sight. Stevens means crown or reward. In a way, Randall Stevens isn't just an alias. He's the man Andy becomes to bring down the corrupt system, a mask of justice to strike at the heart of injustice. There's a recurring focus on birds, not just with Jake, but throughout. Birds represent freedom, the possibility of flight. In Shawshank, they're rare, and when they appear, it's meaningful. When Red is finally released and we see him traveling by bus through the countryside, the sight of birds flying overhead subtly signals his spiritual rebirth. He's no longer caged. Another subtle but powerful motif is time. Watches, clocks, the daily routines of prison life. The ticking of time is everywhere. When Andy locks himself in the warden's office to play the Mozart record, he checks the time before starting. Why? Because time matters. Time is both the enemy and the weapon. Shawshank tries to erase identity through monotony, but Andy fights back by controlling how he spends each hour. Building the library, carving the chess pieces, planning his escape. The library itself is a symbolic space. It starts as a storage room full of cast-off books and becomes a sanctuary of knowledge and hope. Andy writes letters for years to get more books. Eventually, the state sends crates of them, along with a check. That moment isn't just a win for Andy, it's a reminder of persistence paying off. And in a delicious twist of irony, some of the books the state sends are about law and justice. The very system that imprisoned Andy unknowingly gives him the tools to expose it. And then there's the beach, the fabled Zihuatanejo. We don't see it until the final minutes of the film, but it lives in the background of Andy and Red's story long before that. It's not just a destination. It's a metaphor for everything the prison has stolen. Freedom, beauty, peace. When Andy describes it to Red, you can almost see the waves in his eyes. A place with no memory, he says. But that's the trick. Zihuatanejo isn't about forgetting. It's about healing. It's about choosing what memories to carry forward. Even Red's journey at the end is filled with hidden echoes. He repeats Brooks' words when he says, "I find I am so excited I can barely sit still. I hope the Pacific is as blue as it has been in my dreams." The line mirrors Brooks, but the outcome flips. Where Brooks was trapped by fear, Red is lifted by hope. He echoes the past to create a new future. And when we finally see Red and Andy together, reunited by the ocean, there's no triumphant music, no grand speeches, just a soft fade. The film trusts us to feel what they feel. In the end, The Shawshank Redemption is a film layered like an old stone wall. Each detail, each crack, each moment placed with intention. You can watch it once and be moved. Watch it twice and see the craft. Watch it 10 times and still find something new. That's the magic. Not in what it shows outright, but in what it leaves quietly waiting. Like the volcanic rock in a field in Buxton. Smooth and black and not at all natural, just waiting for someone to dig a little deeper. Behind the magic of The Shawshank Redemption lies a story that's as captivating as the film itself. This was a project that almost didn't happen. A film that faced countless obstacles during its production. And yet somehow, everything came together perfectly. The stories from behind the scenes are filled with unexpected twists, unlikely choices, and moments of pure serendipity that would make even the most hardened cynic believe in fate. Let's take a journey behind the camera and uncover the fascinating facts, unexpected challenges, and the little-known trivia that makes Shawshank even more remarkable. One of the most incredible aspects of The Shawshank Redemption is how its journey to becoming a beloved classic almost didn't exist at all. Director Frank Darabont, who wrote the screenplay based on Stephen King's novella Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, was, in many ways, an unlikely director for a project like this. At the time, Darabont was still an emerging talent with only a few films under his belt, including a modestly received horror film, The Woman in the Room, which was based on a Stephen King short story. But Darabont had a unique understanding of how to bring King's stories to life, and he saw something profoundly cinematic in the themes of Shawshank. The first obstacle Darabont encountered was simply getting the film made. The film wasn't an immediate box office success upon release in 1994, and its initial reception was far from overwhelming. But it was during this period that a very strange and incredibly fortunate detail came into play: the success of the film on home video. The Shawshank Redemption quickly became a favorite in VHS rental stores, and it became a sleeper hit, where word-of-mouth praise slowly transformed it into one of the most rewatched films in history. It was the DVD and Blu-ray era that cemented its reputation. For a film that had failed to perform in its theatrical run, this was a rare second life that proved the true power of great storytelling. In fact, the film's initial reception was so underwhelming that it had to struggle to be seen at all. The movie opened quietly in theaters with little fanfare and limited marketing. But there's an amazing fact here. The film's title, The Shawshank Redemption, almost didn't exist in the form we know it. In early promotional materials, the film was considered to be simply Shawshank or Shawshank Redemption, which lacked the impact and draw of the final title. It was only during post-production that the film's full title was finalized. Interestingly, many believe the final name, which places emphasis on the word redemption, is crucial to the film's emotional weight and eventual success. Part of what makes Shawshank so unforgettable is the cast, and while Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman would go on to become iconic, their roles were almost filled by entirely different actors. At one point, Darabont's first choice for the role of Andy Dufresne was Tom Hanks. Hanks was certainly a rising star at the time, with films like Forrest Gump still fresh in public memory, and many thought his signature sincerity would bring a particular gravitas to the character. But the scheduling conflicts were insurmountable, and Hanks had to bow out of the project. Enter Tim Robbins, whose performance, as we know now, defined the role. Robbins, whose career at that point had been filled with a mix of quirky comedies and intense dramas, was an inspired choice for the quiet, introspective Andy. But Robbins wasn't the only casting curveball. Originally, the role of Red was offered to Clint Eastwood, and while Eastwood is no stranger to playing grizzled, world-weary characters, Darabont insisted on a different vision for the character, one that was more emotional and introspective. Eastwood's eventual absence in the role gave birth to Morgan Freeman's unforgettable portrayal of Red, a performance that, as we know, would forever become synonymous with the film. Freeman, who had already established himself as a deeply commanding actor, brought a quiet dignity to the role of Red that made his philosophical musings feel like gospel. The fact that Freeman's narration has become a central element of the film speaks to his contribution to Shawshank's soul. While the casting choices were pivotal, what's equally fascinating are the challenges the production team faced. The majority of the film was shot in a defunct Ohio prison, the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, which provided the perfect backdrop for Shawshank's hauntingly gray and imposing architecture. But the conditions of filming were far from ideal. The Ohio State Reformatory was falling apart, and it was hardly the comfortable set that filmmakers usually prefer. Some of the prison's hallways had significant structural damage, and the building itself had no air conditioning, making the hot, humid Ohio summers unbearable for the cast and crew. In particular, the scenes filmed inside the prison's hold were intense, with the confined space causing a sense of claustrophobia that only added to the dread of being locked away in such a place. It was a far cry from the glossy, polished look of most Hollywood sets. But despite the discomforts of filming, the cast found ways to make the experience unforgettable. The most striking example of this is the bond between Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman. Robbins later admitted that the two actors formed a deep friendship that went beyond their professional roles. Freeman, who had been in the industry for decades by the time Shawshank came around, took Robbins under his wing, offering him guidance and wisdom. In interviews, Robbins has often spoken about how Freeman's presence on set made the grueling days bearable. The camaraderie between them is palpable on screen, but what's even more remarkable is how that chemistry blossomed off-screen as well. Despite these behind-the-scenes hurdles, it's impossible to ignore one of the most memorable elements of the film, the iconic scene with the opera music. When Andy plays Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro over the prison's PA system, it's a moment that captures the essence of the entire film. However, there was a surprising amount of difficulty involved in this scene. The music, which symbolizes Andy's quiet rebellion, was initially chosen because it was a piece of music Darabont loved. But the use of the opera was also a technical challenge. The prison's PA system was outdated and didn't provide the best sound quality, which led to multiple attempts to record and sync the music properly. Even more interesting, the music was recorded live with the entire cast and crew on set, a decision made to capture the authenticity of the moment. It's one of those instances where the technical struggles behind the scene only made the emotional payoff that much richer. As with all great films, The Shawshank Redemption has its fair share of unexpected moments, controversies, and quirks. One of the most bizarre pieces of trivia is the relationship between Stephen King and the film. King, known for his more horror-oriented works, had his own reservations about the adaptation of his novella. When the film was first released, King was unsure of how the story, which didn't contain his usual supernatural elements, would be received. In fact, when King saw the final cut of Shawshank, he was so impressed that he referred to it as the best adaptation of one of my works ever. It's hard to imagine now, but even King himself was initially unsure whether a story like this, one of redemption, friendship, and hope, could ever translate to the big screen. There's also a bit of controversial history regarding the film's legacy. Despite being a favorite in home video rentals and eventually earning multiple Academy Award nominations, the film never won a single Oscar. It lost out to Forrest Gump in the category of Best Picture, and while Shawshank has since been recognized as one of the best films ever made, it wasn't initially given the accolades it truly deserved. There's an ongoing debate about whether this oversight was due to the timing of the film's release or the fact that it was overshadowed by other more commercially successful films. But in the years that followed, The Shawshank Redemption earned the title of one of the greatest films ever made, topping numerous best of lists. Its failure to secure an Oscar win feels almost poetic in the context of the film's themes. Sometimes, it's the quiet, unassuming victories that last. Perhaps the most fascinating and surprising fact of all is the film's enduring legacy. Over time, The Shawshank Redemption has become one of the most watched films on television, DVD, and streaming services, often cited as the ultimate comfort film. It's become a movie that many return to again and again, not just because it's well made, but because it resonates on a deeply personal level. The themes of friendship, redemption, and hope transcend time, and people from all walks of life find something in Shawshank to latch onto. In fact, the film's popularity has led to it being referenced in countless other films, TV shows, and pop culture moments, ensuring that The Shawshank Redemption will remain a cultural touchstone for generations to come. All these behind-the-scenes moments, the near misses, and the quiet victories are what make The Shawshank Redemption not just a great film, but a story of perseverance, belief in the impossible, and the beauty of second chances. It's a film that faced its own struggles, yet ultimately found its way to a place of unmatched greatness. And like the journey of Andy and Red, it proves that sometimes, the best things in life come when you least expect them. The Shawshank Redemption is a film steeped in critical acclaim, beloved by audiences, and revered by filmmakers. Its power comes not just from its broad themes of hope, friendship, and redemption, but also from the emotional and thematic depth embedded in its key moments. These are the scenes that have become iconic in cinematic history, moments so impactful that they transcend the narrative, leaving a lasting impression on anyone who experiences them. They are the very backbone of what makes Shawshank such an unforgettable journey, and analyzing them reveals the intricacies that elevate the film into the realm of greatness. One of the earliest scenes that establishes the film's thematic core is Andy Dufresne's first day at Shawshank Prison. From the moment Andy steps off the bus, the sense of his isolation and the crushing weight of his new reality are palpable. He is a man who has been wrongfully convicted, a person who enters this new world with a mixture of confusion, disbelief, and determination. The way the camera lingers on his face during this sequence, capturing the small, subtle movements of his expression, speaks volumes about Andy's inner turmoil. His introduction to the prison is like a journey into hell, and yet, there's something almost serene about the way he carries himself. This scene sets the stage for Andy's character arc, showing that, even in the most dire of circumstances, there's an inherent strength in his demeanor. The emotional weight of this sequence is amplified by the juxtaposition of the oppressive prison environment. The guards, the overwhelming walls, the coldness of the institution. It's all so stark and unforgiving. In many ways, Shawshank is a metaphor for the harsh, unrelenting nature of life itself, and Andy's first steps within its confines show that, despite the weight of injustice hanging over him, there's something unbreakable about his spirit. It's not just a plot device, it's the foundation for the rest of the film, which revolves around how Andy will navigate this dark and oppressive world while holding on to the belief that life can still be worth living. The viewer sees in Andy a person not yet broken, and that alone sets the stage for his transformative journey. One of the most significant moments early in the film is the scene where Andy offers to help the prison guards with their financial matters, a scene that serves as a precursor to one of the movie's defining elements, Andy's intelligence. When the prison guards are struggling with tax issues, Andy, who was an accountant before being convicted, offers his services, creating the first true instance of his unique value to Shawshank. What's remarkable about this moment is that Andy doesn't just use his skills to survive. He uses them to create a sense of power, to establish a foothold in this hostile environment. It's a subtle act of rebellion, showing that even in the most dehumanizing of places, Andy's intellect becomes his weapon of choice. In contrast to the brutal reality of Shawshank, this scene also brings humor into the mix. The moment when Andy asks the guards to consider whether they might need tax advice becomes unexpectedly comedic, and yet it underscores a significant shift in the tone of the film. What could have been a scene of pure despair instead becomes a moment of cleverness, and Andy's wits are highlighted as his key tool for survival. This foreshadows his eventual rise to prominence within the prison, creating an early spark of hope that will burn brightly through the rest of the story. Of course, one of the most memorable and emotionally resonant scenes in The Shawshank Redemption comes when Andy plays the Marriage of Figaro over the prison loudspeakers. The opera music floods Shawshank, breaking through the bleak and dreary atmosphere of the prison walls. It's a pivotal moment that resonates deeply with both the prisoners and the audience. Andy's decision to play the music is, in essence, an act of defiance. It's a way for him to reclaim something beautiful in a world that has taken so much from him. And as the music echoes through the prison, something profound happens. The prisoners, who have lived in the shadow of hopelessness, are momentarily freed. They stand still, lost in the melody, each of them experiencing a brief moment of transcendence. This moment captures one of the core themes of the film. The idea that even in the darkest of circumstances, beauty and hope can still shine through. The impact of this moment is not just emotional, it's symbolic. The opera music, often associated with higher culture, stands in stark contrast to the grim reality of Shawshank. It's almost as though Andy is reaching beyond the confines of the prison, attempting to remind the men of something they may have forgotten. That they are human, and they are capable of experiencing something greater than the life they've been forced into. The prisoners' reactions are raw and genuine, and we can see in their faces the power that music has to touch the soul. This scene is more than just a plot point. It's a representation of the power of the human spirit, the longing for freedom, and the belief that there is still something worth fighting for. Another incredibly significant scene occurs later in the film when Andy's escape plan is finally set in motion. After years of enduring the hell of Shawshank, Andy's meticulous planning comes to fruition in a stunning and daring escape that has become one of the most iconic sequences in film history. Andy's crawl through the sewage pipes is the culmination of his unrelenting belief that, no matter the odds, there is always a way out, always a chance for redemption. The journey through the filth and the darkness is a moment that symbolizes the soul-crushing weight of years of imprisonment. But it's also the moment of freedom, the final release of a man who has been shackled by the world's cruelty for far too long. This scene, in which Andy emerges from the sewage pipes and stands in the rain, is one of the most powerful moments of cinematic liberation ever captured. The image of Andy, covered in grime, standing with his arms outstretched as the rain falls upon him, is both cathartic and triumphant. For Andy, it's the physical embodiment of the metaphorical freedom he's gained after years of enduring unimaginable hardship. His escape from Shawshank isn't just about leaving the prison. It's about reclaiming his dignity, his humanity, and his hope. The rain, which washes away the dirt and grime, becomes a symbol of cleansing and rebirth, a moment of spiritual liberation that speaks to the power of redemption. The culmination of Andy's journey leads to one of the most emotionally charged moments in the entire film. The reunion between Andy and Red on the beach in Mexico. After years of being separated by the walls of Shawshank, this moment of reunion represents the fulfillment of everything the film has been building toward. The hope of freedom, the beauty of friendship, and the triumph of the human spirit. The sheer weight of the moment is staggering, and it's made all the more powerful by the simplicity of the scene. There are no grand speeches, no dramatic flourishes, just two men, sharing a quiet, intimate moment on a beautiful beach. It's a moment that feels earned, as if everything that has come before it has been leading to this singular, breathtaking point. Red's emotional journey, and his eventual decision to follow Andy to the beach, is the final thread that ties the film's themes of friendship and redemption together. In this scene, Red's own transformation is complete. From the man who once saw hope as a dangerous thing to the man who, after years of reflection and change, is able to embrace it fully, Red's evolution is the heart of the film. His journey from despair to hope mirrors Andy's own journey, and their reunion symbolizes the completion of both their arcs. What makes these moments so powerful is their ability to transcend the immediate circumstances of the story and tap into something universal. These scenes, from the first steps of Andy's prison journey to his eventual freedom, are not just about the specifics of Shawshank. They are about the broader human experience. They speak to the resilience of the human spirit, the capacity for hope in the face of overwhelming odds, and the transformative power of friendship. They are the emotional pillars of the Shawshank Redemption, and they resonate with audiences not just because of their narrative importance, but because they speak to something deeply human within all of us. By examining these key moments, we can see why the Shawshank Redemption remains so beloved. It's not just the story of one man's escape from prison. It's the story of the human capacity for redemption, for transformation, and for finding light even in the darkest places. Each scene is an emotional crescendo, building on the themes of hope, freedom, and the importance of the human connection. And in the end, it is these moments that shape the film's legacy, cementing its place as one of the greatest cinematic experiences ever created. When we step into the world of The Shawshank Redemption, we enter a universe that, though grounded in a stark reality, is filled with cinematic magic. The film's ability to connect with audiences on such an emotional level goes beyond its powerful narrative and unforgettable characters. It's the creative and technical innovations behind the scenes that helped bring Stephen King's story to life in such a lasting and impactful way. From the film's breathtaking cinematography to its nuanced sound design, Shawshank is a masterclass in how technical achievements can elevate a film from good to unforgettable. A good starting point is the work of cinematographer Roger Deakins, whose contributions to the film are nothing short of groundbreaking. Deakins, who would go on to become one of the most revered cinematographers in the history of cinema, brought an extraordinary sense of atmosphere to Shawshank's often gloomy and oppressive world. The way he captured the prison, the cold stone walls, the grey skies, the narrow hallways, was essential to the film's thematic undertones. But what truly makes Deakins' work in Shawshank stand out is his ability to use light as a storytelling tool. The interplay between light and shadow is not just a technical feat but a narrative one. Deakins uses lighting to symbolize hope, freedom, and the passage of time. Take, for example, the iconic scene where Andy escapes through the sewage pipes. The lighting in this sequence is perfect in its simplicity. The dark, claustrophobic tunnel represents the years of suffering Andy has endured, but as he crawls through the pipes and finally emerges into the rain-soaked night, the lighting transforms. The cool, industrial tones of the tunnel give way to the warm, natural light of the open air. It's a moment of transcendence, visually signifying Andy's escape from the literal and metaphorical confines of Shawshank. The rain itself becomes a cleansing force, and Deakins' use of light in this scene reinforces that symbolic rebirth. Throughout the film, Deakins' cinematography tells a story of its own. The way he frames shots, whether it's the sweeping vistas of Shawshank's oppressive grounds or the tight, intimate close-ups of Andy and Red's conversations, keeps the viewer engaged not just with the narrative, but with the emotions that run beneath it. The choice to focus on the small details, like the worn faces of the inmates or the lonely, empty corridors of Shawshank, reinforces the sense of isolation that defines the film's atmosphere. But it's also Deakins' ability to take these moments of despair and weave in subtle moments of hope, however fleeting, that makes his work so special. When Andy plays The Marriage of Figaro, for instance, the wide shot of the prison yard with all the inmates standing still, lost in the music, is a cinematic masterpiece. Deakins uses the space and the light to show the transformation that's occurring, both in the characters and the prison itself. Of course, a film like Shawshank doesn't rely solely on its visuals to tell its story. It also relies on its sound. The sound design, orchestrated by a team of talented professionals, plays an incredibly important role in bringing Shawshank to life. The most obvious example of this is the use of opera music to punctuate Andy's acts of defiance, particularly the famous Marriage of Figaro scene. But it's the subtler elements of sound that truly elevate the film. The constant hum of the prison, the clang of doors, the shuffling of guards' boots, the echoing silence of the solitary confinement cells, creates a sense of confinement that permeates the entire film. These sound cues don't just fill the silence. They add to the emotional depth of the film, allowing the audience to experience the claustrophobia and despair of Shawshank alongside the characters. What makes the sound design so impactful is that it serves to enhance the moments of emotion. Take the final sequence, where Andy stands in the rain, arms outstretched, as he celebrates his freedom. The sound of the rain, the soft wind, and the distant echoes of the prison behind him help to convey the sense of both release and finality. It's a moment of pure sensory experience, and it wouldn't have had the same emotional weight without the sound working in harmony with the visuals. In many ways, the sound of Shawshank functions almost like a second language, conveying the unspeakable emotions that flow beneath the surface of the characters' words and actions. While The Shawshank Redemption is celebrated for its profound emotional depth, it also innovated in ways that weren't immediately apparent to audiences. One of the most interesting aspects of the film's production was its use of time and its portrayal of the passage of years. The film spans decades in the lives of its characters, yet there's no overt use of makeup or special effects to age the actors. Instead, the filmmakers relied on subtle storytelling techniques to convey the long stretch of time. This is where the editing, guided by Richard Francis Bruce, becomes essential. The film often cuts between the present and flashbacks in a way that feels natural, without jarring the viewer out of the experience. There's no grand time-lapse effect to signify the passing of years. Instead, the filmmakers rely on the small details, the growing wear and tear on Andy and Red's faces, the gradual changes in the prison, the shifting relationships between the characters, to tell the story of time's unrelenting march. The editing also plays a key role in how the film builds tension. Take the scenes where Andy is helping the warden with money laundering. These moments are shot with an almost detached calmness, which contrasts sharply with the growing sense of unease and danger that builds as Andy gets closer to his eventual escape. The cuts between Andy's everyday prison life, the building tension in his work with the warden, and his moments of reflection create a sense of urgency beneath the surface calm. It's editing that allows the audience to feel the threat of discovery without overtly stating it. Another example of how the film never fully relies on exposition to tell its story. Speaking of the warden and his role in the narrative, there's something interesting about the way the film uses characters like Warden Norton, Bob Gunton, and Captain Hadley, Clancy Brown. These characters, who represent the corrupt and oppressive forces of Shawshank, are essential to the emotional journey of Andy and Red. But what's particularly fascinating is the way the filmmakers use visual storytelling to emphasize the difference between the good and evil characters. Warden Norton, for instance, is often framed in stark, unforgiving ways. His harsh, domineering presence fills the screen. He is always seen from a low angle, making him seem larger than life, and often surrounded by dark shadows that make him appear even more menacing. In contrast, Andy and Red, who are often the moral center of the film, are framed in softer light, often in medium shots that give them a more human, relatable presence. But the most significant technical achievement of Shawshank lies in the way the film uses its environment to shape the narrative. The prison itself becomes more than just a setting, it becomes a character. The crumbling walls, the sprawling yard, the dark tunnels. These physical spaces are imbued with meaning. Shawshank is a place where the characters are physically and mentally trapped, but it is also a place where transformation occurs. Andy's escape is not just about him breaking free of the prison's walls. It's about breaking free of the mental walls he's had to build up to survive. The prison yard, the library, the solitary confinement cells, all of these spaces are used to show the evolution of Andy's spirit, as well as the relationships between the characters. The setting, in many ways, becomes a visual reflection of the emotional and psychological states of the characters. Behind the camera, Frank Darabont's direction ties all these elements together in ways that feel effortless. Darabont's vision for Shawshank was one of authenticity, and he insisted on shooting the film in real locations, rather than relying on studio sets. The Ohio State Reformatory, where much of the film was shot, provided the perfect backdrop for Shawshank's grim atmosphere. But it wasn't just the prison's physicality that made it ideal. It was also the way Darabont was able to use the space to tell the story. The prison became a reflection of the characters' emotional journeys, from the desolate, claustrophobic hallways to the expansive yard where Andy and Red's friendship blossomed. Every room, every corridor, every corner of Shawshank had a purpose, both narratively and symbolically. The technical innovations of the Shawshank Redemption are often subtle, but they are what allow the story to unfold with such grace and depth. The cinematography, sound design, editing, and production choices all work together to immerse the audience in a world that is, at once, deeply oppressive and yet profoundly human. The technical achievements in Shawshank are not flashy or over the top. They are, in many ways, understated, but it is precisely this restraint that allows the emotional core of the story to shine through. As the Shawshank Redemption unfolds, it immerses the audience in more than just the tale of Andy Dufresne's escape from prison. It presents a profound examination of the human condition, with themes and symbolism woven into every frame. These layers of meaning go beyond the immediate plot, speaking to universal truths that resonate deeply within the viewer. The prison setting, the friendships, the hope, and even the dark, oppressive environment of Shawshank itself reflect not just the individual struggle for freedom but a broader societal commentary on the nature of hope, justice, and the systemic forces that shape human lives. At the heart of the story is the theme of hope. From the very beginning, the film challenges the notion of hope in a world that has seemingly given up on the possibility of redemption. Andy Dufresne, a man wrongly convicted of murder, enters Shawshank with an unwavering belief that his innocence will one day be proven. Yet, the longer he stays within the prison walls, the more hope seems like an impossible dream. It's a theme that plays out in the lives of many of Shawshank's inmates, most notably Red, who is initially convinced that hope is a dangerous thing, something that will only lead to disappointment. The film, however, doesn't just explore the philosophical struggle between hope and despair. It actively demonstrates how hope, in its purest form, can serve as a means of survival. For Andy, hope is not just a passive desire for freedom. It's an active force, something that drives him to improve the lives of those around him, whether it's by helping the prison guards with their financial issues or by establishing the library. His idea of hope is not simply wishing for a better future but using the present, however grim it may be, to build something that can endure. One of the key moments that demonstrates Andy's unwavering belief in hope is the scene where he plays the Marriage of Figaro over the prison's loudspeakers. For the men in Shawshank, a place defined by its brutality and harshness, this moment of beauty and transcendence becomes a beacon of hope. It's a reminder that, even in the darkest of places, something beautiful can still exist. Something that lifts the human spirit, if only for a moment. And that moment, as fleeting as it may seem, is enough to remind the prisoners of their humanity. The theme of hope is directly tied to the film's central symbolism. The iconic image of the poster of Raquel Welch that covers the whole Andy has spent years digging in his cell. This poster, seemingly trivial in its appearance, represents not only Andy's escape but the idea of hope itself. It is a physical manifestation of the idea that even the smallest act of defiance can create a path toward freedom. The poster, over time, shifts from being a mere cover-up for Andy's tunnel to a symbol of his determination, the tangible proof of his belief in a better future. It's a clever use of symbolism, as the poster represents both the unreachable nature of Andy's hopes and, simultaneously, the means by which those hopes will eventually be realized. The fact that it is Raquel Welch, an iconic figure of unattainable beauty, adds another layer of meaning. The poster is both a fantasy and a very real, very human hope. It suggests that, much like the posters we hang on our walls, hope is a vision we hold on to, even if it seems distant or unreachable. Yet, as Andy clings to hope, The Shawshank Redemption also explores the destructive power of despair, which is embodied in the prison itself. Shawshank, in its overwhelming grey walls, cold corridors, and institutionalized cruelty, is the perfect backdrop for this theme. It's a world designed to break the human spirit, to crush any trace of individuality, and to reduce its inhabitants to mere shadows of themselves. This is made evident in the portrayal of characters like Brooks Hatlen, who, after decades in prison, is released only to find himself unable to cope with the outside world. His tragic end serves as a painful reminder of how society, both inside and outside the prison, strips away a person's identity. For Brooks, the world beyond Shawshank is an alien place, one that he is unable to navigate without the structure and control of the prison. His inability to adapt reflects a truth about the penal system. It doesn't rehabilitate, it dehumanizes. And in Brooks' case, it leads to his ultimate downfall. The theme of institutionalization is another major aspect of the film's social commentary. While Andy and Red are able to retain their identities and ultimately escape Shawshank's clutches, the system itself has a profound impact on those within it. Shawshank is designed not only to punish but to erase the very notion of individuality and hope. For many of the inmates, particularly those who have spent decades inside, the idea of life outside the prison walls becomes an abstract notion. This is exemplified by the transformation of Red, who begins the film with a cynical, almost defeated attitude. For him, freedom is something that belongs to other people, a dream that's far too elusive to even entertain. It isn't until he meets Andy, and witnesses the power of hope and friendship, that he is able to believe in the possibility of life beyond the prison. Red's character arc is a powerful commentary on the psychological toll of imprisonment, and the way that institutional forces can erase a person's ability to envision a future outside of their circumstances. As much as Shawshank is about hope, it's equally about the dangers of cynicism and the effects of a corrupted system. The warden, Norton, represents the dark side of institutional power. He is a man who uses the prison system not for rehabilitation but for personal gain, laundering money and exploiting the inmates for his own benefit. Norton's character is a sharp contrast to Andy's sense of justice, and his eventual downfall serves as a powerful message about the consequences of corruption. The fact that the warden is undone by his own greed, caught in a trap of his own making, is a subtle, but impactful, commentary on the broader theme of systemic injustice. The film suggests that those who wield power for personal gain are doomed to collapse, and in this, the narrative draws attention to the moral failings that often underpin institutions of authority. One of the most poignant symbols in the film is the rock hammer that Andy uses to chip away at his prison wall. Initially, it seems like a mere tool, a way for Andy to pass the time. But over the course of the film, the rock hammer becomes a symbol of Andy's unyielding determination. In the hands of a lesser person, the hammer would be nothing more than a means of escape. But Andy uses it as a symbol of his refusal to be broken by Shawshank. The hammer, though small and seemingly insignificant, becomes his method of reclaiming agency in a world that seeks to strip him of it. The rock hammer is a metaphor for the small, seemingly inconsequential acts of defiance that can lead to monumental change. It's the idea that, even in the smallest acts of rebellion, there is a powerful potential for transformation. In addition to its symbolic elements, Shawshank offers a sharp critique of society's treatment of the incarcerated and its tendency to view prisoners as mere statistics or objects of punishment. It challenges the notion that the penal system is inherently just, revealing instead a world where power is abused, corruption runs rampant, and individuals are reduced to their worst moments. The film's portrayal of the prison system calls into question the very concept of justice, forcing viewers to reflect on the real-world implications of a system that often fails to rehabilitate and, instead, perpetuates cycles of violence and despair. Ultimately, The Shawshank Redemption is a profound meditation on freedom, both the physical and the psychological. It asks what it truly means to be free, not just in a literal sense, but in a deeper, more existential way. As Andy and Red journey toward their respective forms of liberation, they find that freedom is not simply the absence of physical restraint, but the ability to hold onto one's identity, one's hope, and one's humanity in the face of overwhelming forces that seek to strip them away. The film's lasting impact lies in its ability to present these complex themes within the confines of an accessible and deeply human story. It's a film that speaks to the universal desire for freedom and redemption, and in doing so, it encourages us all to hold on to hope, even when the walls around us seem insurmountable. When we step into the world of The Shawshank Redemption, we are enveloped by more than just a compelling story and unforgettable performances. The true mastery of the film lies in its ability to transport us into the world of Shawshank State Penitentiary through cinematic techniques that elevate the narrative, making the emotional highs and lows feel all the more powerful. The way the film is shot, the subtle details embedded in the framing of each scene, the careful design of the soundscape, all of these elements work together to amplify the film's central themes, deepen its characters, and shape our emotional experience. Every visual, every sound, every choice made by director Frank Darabont and his team feels intentional, underscoring the broader message of hope, freedom, and transformation. One of the most striking features of The Shawshank Redemption is its visual style, which is both immersive and evocative. Cinematographer Roger Deakins, who would go on to become one of the most celebrated visual storytellers in the history of cinema, brings an unparalleled sense of atmosphere to the film. The very look of Shawshank, its bleak, industrial environment, the cold stone walls of the prison, and the weather-beaten, grey skies, evokes a world devoid of hope. The visuals are grounded in realism, with the cinematography capturing the oppressive nature of the prison setting while simultaneously offering moments of transcendence. Shawshank is a character in itself, its towering walls and narrow corridors both physically and metaphorically confining the characters. But within this prison of stone and iron, moments of beauty and humanity manage to shine through, like flickers of light in an otherwise dark world. Deakins is particularly skilled at using lighting to enhance the emotional tone of each scene. The film frequently shifts between darker, more somber tones to moments of warmth and light, mirroring the internal journey of the characters, especially Andy and Red. One of the most notable examples of this is the moment when Andy escapes through the sewage pipes. The long, dark tunnel is initially bathed in shadows, underscoring the grim nature of his struggle. But as Andy emerges into the rain-soaked night, Deakins floods the frame with the cool light of the open sky, symbolizing Andy's liberation and the dawn of a new life. The contrast between the harsh, industrial interior of Shawshank and the natural world outside becomes a visual metaphor for Andy's escape from his mental and physical imprisonment. The way Deakins uses framing throughout the film is also crucial to its visual storytelling. Many of the scenes are shot with a sense of confinement, using narrow hallways and tight close-ups to emphasize the limited space and restricted freedom of the inmates. The camera often lingers on the faces of the characters, particularly Andy and Red, capturing the subtle emotional shifts that define their inner worlds. There is a deliberate stillness in these shots, allowing the performances to shine without the distraction of excessive movement. Deakins' cinematography often frames the characters in a way that highlights their isolation, but it also serves to showcase the moments of connection that break through the darkness. Whether it's the fleeting moment when Andy plays the marriage of Figaro or the quiet camaraderie between Red and Andy as they share their dreams of freedom. The framing of shots also serves as a narrative tool, with certain compositions mirroring the progression of the characters' arcs. The iconic scene of Andy standing in the rain, arms outstretched after his escape, is a perfect example. The wide shot, with Andy framed against the vast, open sky, conveys both the overwhelming sense of freedom he has attained and his sheer relief after years of torment. The rain, too, adds another layer to the visual storytelling, representing not only Andy's physical cleansing but also his emotional and spiritual rebirth. The wide angle of the shot, with Andy standing alone in this expansive space, contrasts sharply with the confined, claustrophobic prison scenes, underscoring his transformation from a man trapped by circumstance to one who has claimed his own destiny. But The Shawshank Redemption is not just about striking visuals. It's also about how the film manipulates time and space to create tension, build suspense, and deepen our connection to the characters. The film spans decades, and yet it never feels rushed or artificially compressed. Part of this is due to the seamless editing of Richard Francis Bruce, who uses time in a way that feels organic, never forcing the narrative to speed up or slow down. The passing of years is signified through small, meaningful changes, Andy's physical transformation, the gradual wear and tear of Shawshank's infrastructure, the subtle shifts in the relationship between Andy and Red. All of these small details convey the passage of time in a way that feels natural. The editing is deliberate in its pacing, allowing the story to unfold at its own rhythm, giving the characters room to breathe and develop. One of the more interesting stylistic choices in Shawshank is its use of flashbacks. Rather than employing the traditional technique of flashbacks to recount pivotal moments in the past, the film uses them sparingly, only when necessary to deepen our understanding of a character's motivations. The flashbacks of Andy's trial and the murders he's accused of are never sensationalized. Instead, they serve as pieces of the puzzle, offering subtle clues that, in the end, reveal the truth about his innocence. These flashbacks also reinforce the thematic concept of the unjustness of the prison system, with Andy being trapped not only by Shawshank's walls but by a flawed system that is too quick to condemn him. The restrained use of flashbacks is a conscious choice by Darabont to focus the narrative on the emotional journey of the characters rather than getting bogged down in exposition or backstory. The sound design of The Shawshank Redemption plays an equally important role in shaping the atmosphere of the film. The world of Shawshank is a place of grinding machinery, echoing footsteps, and cold, hard stone, and the soundscape reinforces the oppressive and isolating nature of the prison. The film's sound is meticulously crafted, creating an immersive experience that adds layers to the visual storytelling. The faint sounds of clanging doors, the distant murmurs of the guards, the scraping of metal on concrete, all of these elements evoke the suffocating presence of the prison, amplifying the sense of confinement that the characters feel. The repetitive, almost monotonous quality of these sounds mirrors the inmates' daily routines, underscoring the mind-numbing reality of life within Shawshank's walls. But sound, like the visuals, is also used to convey moments of transcendence and hope. One of the most memorable scenes in the film is when Andy plays the marriage of Figaro over the prison's loudspeakers. The soaring opera music cuts through the clattering noise of the prison, offering a rare moment of beauty and elegance. The sound of the music, combined with the stillness of the men as they stand motionless in the yard, creates a powerful emotional effect. It's a moment of rebellion, a defiance of the prison's oppressive atmosphere, and the music becomes a symbol of Andy's belief in something greater than his circumstances. The sound of the opera, as it spreads through Shawshank, is not just a form of resistance. It's a lifeline, a reminder of the beauty that still exists in the world, even within the confines of a brutal prison. The score, composed by Thomas Newman, is equally significant in shaping the emotional tone of the film. Newman's music is subtle but deeply evocative, underscoring the film's quieter moments of introspection and its larger, more dramatic beats. The score is never overpowering but always present, gently guiding the audience through the highs and lows of the narrative. It's a soundtrack that reflects the emotional depth of the film, with its haunting melodies and melancholic undertones providing an emotional anchor for the story. Newman's score also complements the themes of hope and redemption, with the music often swelling in key moments, lifting the viewer's spirit just as Andy's journey lifts the hearts of the audience. The unique stylistic choices made by Frank Darabont in terms of visual storytelling, cinematography, editing, sound design, and music all contribute to the film's lasting impact. Darabont's direction is defined by his restraint, his ability to allow the story to unfold slowly and organically without resorting to unnecessary flair. He understands that the true power of the film lies in its quiet moments of connection, whether it's the unspoken bond between Andy and Red or the small, yet significant acts of resistance against the oppressive forces of Shawshank. The film's style is not flashy or attention-grabbing. Instead, it's subtle and precise, allowing the emotions of the characters and the richness of the narrative to take center stage. Through every choice, Darabont creates a world that feels real, tangible, and deeply moving, making The Shawshank Redemption a timeless masterpiece of cinematic storytelling. In the world of The Shawshank Redemption, Frank Darabont's directorial choices go far beyond just telling a story. They immerse the audience in an experience. The film's visual style, cinematography, editing, sound design, and music all come together in a delicate balance, each element enhancing the others to create a world that feels not only authentic but profoundly moving. It's not just a story about Andy Dufresne and Red. It's a story about human resilience, friendship, hope, and the devastating weight of institutionalization, all told through visual cues and auditory design that make every frame and every sound feel purposeful. One of the most striking features of The Shawshank Redemption is its ability to transport the audience into the oppressive, cold world of Shawshank State Penitentiary. Cinematographer Roger Deakins, a visionary in his own right, captures the grim realism of prison life while also allowing the occasional bursts of light and beauty to shine through. His approach to cinematography is subtle but deeply effective. The film's color palette is carefully chosen to emphasize the bleak and unyielding nature of the prison, with muted tones of gray, brown, and black dominating the frames. Shawshank's walls, the drab uniforms of the inmates, and the concrete surfaces of the prison itself all serve as visual metaphors for the hopelessness that suffocates those trapped inside. But Deakins is not content to simply show the harshness of Shawshank. He also finds ways to highlight moments of subtle grace and the possibilities of redemption. The contrast between the dark interiors of the prison and the occasional glimpses of the outside world, particularly the scenes of Andy standing in the rain after his escape, creates a powerful visual metaphor for the themes of the film. Shawshank, with its towering walls and narrow corridors, represents the emotional and physical confinement that the characters experience. But when Andy escapes and stands in the open air, bathed in the rain, the contrast between the closed-in prison and the wide-open space outside serves as a symbol of the freedom he has attained, both physically and spiritually. Deakins' use of framing throughout the film also plays a critical role in visual storytelling. There's a deliberate use of wide shots, especially when showing the prison's architecture, to emphasize the overwhelming sense of isolation and the brutal scale of Shawshank. The inmates are often shown as small figures within these vast, cold spaces, reinforcing their lack of agency. But even within these wide shots, Deakins carefully places the characters to draw attention to their emotional states. Andy, for example, is frequently placed in isolated spaces, either alone in his cell or at the center of large, empty rooms, which visually reinforces the emotional distance he feels from the world around him. The use of tight close-ups, on the other hand, particularly in scenes of intense emotional revelation or vulnerability, provides a counterbalance to the vast, impersonal world of Shawshank. In these intimate moments, the camera allows us to connect with the characters on a much deeper level. The framing of characters also subtly tracks their emotional and psychological arcs. Andy begins the film as a man who is physically confined but mentally free, holding on to his innocence and his belief that justice will prevail. But as the years go by and his case remains unresolved, Andy's hope starts to feel more fragile. Deakins frames him in more claustrophobic, confined spaces, mirroring his growing realization that freedom, in a literal sense, may be unattainable. However, Andy never truly loses his internal sense of hope, and this is conveyed visually in the rare moments of freedom he experiences, such as when he plays the Marriage of Figaro on the prison's loudspeakers, or when he stands in the rain after his escape. These moments of beauty in the film are framed not as extraneous or indulgent, but as essential expressions of Andy's inner life. The visual choices reflect the emotional journey he's on, building a story not just through dialogue but through the physical space he occupies and the way that space is captured on film. The cinematography is complemented by the film's editing, which is intentionally unhurried, allowing the emotional beats of the story to unfold with a natural rhythm. Editor Richard Francis Bruce masterfully balances the pace of the film, taking the time to dwell on the characters' inner lives and allowing the slow burn of the narrative to keep the audience engaged. The film spans decades, but through careful pacing, the audience never feels as if the story is dragging. Instead, the passage of time feels organic and unforced. Key moments of emotional weight, such as Andy's transformation from a man of quiet desperation to one of unwavering hope, unfold gradually, giving the audience a chance to connect with his journey. One of the most notable techniques in the film's editing is the way time is depicted. The Shawshank Redemption spans nearly 3 decades, and rather than using overt visual or narrative cues to signal the passing of time, the film allows subtle visual changes, such as Andy's aging, the gradual decay of Shawshank, or the changes in the appearance of the characters, to mark the years. This restrained editing choice reflects the way time moves for the prisoners themselves. It's slow, unnoticed, and often numbing, until, one day, it becomes clear that everything has changed. The editing allows the audience to see time not as a series of disconnected events but as a continuous, almost imperceptible force that shapes the lives of the characters. It is through this naturalistic approach to time that the emotional resonance of the story is deepened, especially when we witness the full arc of characters like Red, whose years inside Shawshank have defined his worldview. The sound design in the Shawshank Redemption also plays a pivotal role in crafting the atmosphere of the film. Shawshank's environment is defined by a constant hum of activity, the clanging of prison doors, the echoing footsteps of guards, the scraping of metal bars, all of which are amplified to create a sense of confinement. The use of sound throughout the film serves to further emphasize the physical and emotional imprisonment of the characters. The relentless, grinding noise of the prison machinery mirrors the monotonous, soul-crushing daily life of the inmates, while the absence of sound in certain scenes, such as when Andy first escapes through the tunnel, is used to create an eerie sense of isolation and freedom. In contrast, the film also uses silence as a powerful tool, especially in moments when characters experience catharsis or self-reflection. One of the most poignant moments in the film is when Andy is locked in the solitary confinement room for a month as punishment for playing the Marriage of Figaro over the loudspeakers. The silence in that room is deafening, heightening Andy's sense of alienation, and when the guards finally let him out, the sounds of the prison return as a reminder that, despite everything, Andy remains a part of this harsh world. The film uses these contrasts between silence and noise to underscore the emotional highs and lows of the characters' journeys. The music in The Shawshank Redemption, composed by Thomas Newman, is another key element that shapes the film's emotional landscape. Newman's score is often understated but always profoundly moving, complementing the visual storytelling without overwhelming it. The music's themes of melancholy and quiet hope mirror the emotional journey of the characters. The score's subtle orchestration, with its haunting melodies and gentle rhythms, creates a sense of longing and introspection, especially in scenes that focus on the passage of time. The quiet beauty of Newman's music allows the audience to reflect on the themes of the film without imposing an overt sense of sentimentality. The most iconic use of music in the film comes during the scene where Andy plays the Marriage of Figaro over the loudspeakers for the entire prison to hear. The soaring opera music cuts through the prison's grating noises, offering a moment of grace and beauty in an otherwise brutal environment. The choice of opera is significant, as it is a form of art that represents both culture and sophistication, two things that are out of reach for the men of Shawshank. Yet, Andy's act of playing the opera is a defiant gesture that serves to remind the prisoners of their humanity. In this moment, the music becomes a symbol of Andy's belief in something greater than his circumstances. It's a moment of transcendence, and the music elevates the emotional impact of the scene, making it one of the most powerful moments in the film. The sound and music work hand in hand with the cinematography to create an experience that feels both grounded in reality and transcendent. Each frame of The Shawshank Redemption is carefully constructed to not only tell the story visually, but to evoke an emotional response from the viewer. Whether through the calculated use of lighting, the deliberate pacing of the editing, the subtle shifts in the soundscape, or the powerful musical score, the film's technical elements all come together to amplify the emotional core of the narrative. In The Shawshank Redemption, Frank Darabont's directorial vision is brought to life through a blend of cinematic techniques that are meticulously crafted to enhance the themes of hope, redemption, and the human spirit. Every visual choice, every sound, and every note of music works together to create a world that is rich with meaning and emotional depth. The result is a film that continues to resonate with audiences long after the credits roll, a testament to the power of cinematic storytelling at its finest. The Shawshank Redemption is not just a film. It's a profound cinematic experience, one that delves deep into the human condition and explores the most powerful emotions we can experience: hope, despair, and the relentless quest for freedom. From its stunning performances and masterful direction to its meticulous attention to detail in every aspect of filmmaking, this film has left an indelible mark on audiences around the world. But what makes The Shawshank Redemption truly stand out is not just its gripping narrative or iconic characters, but the way it connects with viewers on a deeply personal level. It is a story of survival, transformation, and the redemptive power of friendship. It is a timeless reminder that even in the darkest of circumstances, there is always the possibility of light at the end of the tunnel. When we first enter Shawshank State Penitentiary, we are introduced to a world that is unrelentingly harsh, where the walls of the prison are not just physical barriers but emotional ones as well. Andy Dufresne's journey from despair to hope is one of the most captivating arcs in film, and Tim Robbins' portrayal of him, quiet, introspective, and unwavering in his sense of morality, grounds the film in a character whose strength lies not in physicality but in his unshakable belief in justice and redemption. His relationship with Ellis Red Redding, played by Morgan Freeman with a blend of wisdom, warmth, and vulnerability, is the beating heart of the film. Their bond evolves from an unlikely friendship between two men in a brutal, dehumanizing environment to something far deeper, one that transcends the boundaries of time and space. The themes of The Shawshank Redemption, hope, freedom, and the power of human connection, are not simply explored through dialogue, but through every frame of the film. The cinematography, edited with careful attention to the passage of time, transforms Shawshank from a grim place of confinement into a symbol of both physical and emotional imprisonment. The visual language of the film, through the use of color, lighting, and framing, speaks volumes about the characters' inner lives. It conveys their struggles, their moments of quiet rebellion, and ultimately, their quest for something greater than the walls that surround them. Sound and music play a crucial role in shaping the film's atmosphere. Thomas Newman's evocative score elevates the emotional weight of key moments, creating a sense of melancholy and beauty even in the most tragic of circumstances. The use of sound design, whether it's the quiet clanging of prison doors or the soaring crescendo of the Marriage of Figaro, draws us deeper into the emotional landscape of Shawshank, heightening our sense of immersion in the story. Every auditory choice amplifies the film's central themes, bringing the emotional stakes to life in a way that words alone could never accomplish. The film's pacing is another critical element of its storytelling. By allowing the narrative to unfold at a deliberate pace, The Shawshank Redemption gives viewers the time to reflect on the journey the characters are undertaking. The passing of years within the prison is marked not by flashy montages, but by subtle shifts in the characters' appearances, attitudes, and relationships. It's in these quiet moments of transition, Whether it's Andy's gradual acceptance of his fate, Red's evolving understanding of hope, or the realization that the lives they once knew have been irreversibly changed, that the film's emotional impact truly takes root. The film's commitment to its characters is reflected in the intricate, multi-layered performances. Tim Robbins, in his portrayal of Andy, captures the quiet dignity of a man who refuses to let the system break him, while Morgan Freeman's portrayal of Red, who has been inside Shawshank for nearly his entire life, is infused with a deep sense of weariness and wisdom. The supporting cast, including the manipulative Warden Norton, Bob Gunton, and the violent yet sympathetic Brooks, James Whitmore, add complexity to the world of Shawshank, making it feel like a fully realized, lived-in place where every individual is struggling to find meaning and redemption in their own way. What makes The Shawshank Redemption so extraordinary, however, is the way it transcends its genre. At its core, the film is not simply about prison life or criminal justice. It's about the human spirit. It's about the things that bind us together: hope, friendship, and the belief that no matter how harsh the world may seem, there is always the possibility of transformation. Through Andy and Red's journeys, we are reminded that redemption isn't always about escape or physical freedom. Sometimes, it's about finding peace within ourselves and, through our relationships, rediscovering the ability to hope. Perhaps one of the film's greatest achievements is its ability to inspire a sense of catharsis in its audience. It's the kind of film that leaves you feeling changed after watching it, moved by the emotional depth of the story and the clarity with which it portrays the human experience. It doesn't shy away from depicting the brutal realities of life in prison, but it also reminds us that even in the bleakest of places, we can still find moments of beauty, joy, and redemption. The transformation of Andy, who goes from a wrongfully convicted banker to a symbol of hope for those around him, is one of the most powerful narratives in film history. His escape, both literal and metaphorical, is a testament to the strength of the human will and the enduring power of hope. In the end, The Shawshank Redemption is not just a story about what happens within the walls of Shawshank Prison. It's about the way those walls exist within us, and how, through perseverance and belief in one another, we can overcome the obstacles that life throws our way. It's a film that reminds us of the power of human connection, the importance of never losing sight of our dreams, and the undeniable truth that no matter how difficult life may seem, there is always hope. If you've made it this far into our deep dive, you're no doubt as captivated by this cinematic masterpiece as we are. The Shawshank Redemption stands as a true testament to the power of storytelling, and its timeless appeal will continue to resonate for generations to come. So, as we close this chapter, remember the lessons it imparts. That even in the darkest moments, there's always a chance for redemption, and the human spirit is more resilient than we often give it credit for. If you loved this breakdown, give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of cinema. Let's keep exploring movies together.